Hi, welcome to another episode of the Ambient Mellotron here on the Ambient iPad. Let's make some music. In the last jam, I did some short improvs in between answering questions, and I'm going to use that same setup for this video. It uses two iconic sounds from the Mellotron M400, 3 violins B and cello. The signal chain is the Mellotron M4000D Mini. Its master mono analog output goes into a Focusrite Scarlett 18i8 interface, which communicates back and forth with an iPad Pro through a USB-C hub that also lets me power the iPad at the same time. We're using apeMatrix. We're only using one app today, MixBox, which is a multi-effects app with a little bit of a vintage flavor. You can tell by the look and feel here. What I'm going to do first, though, is demonstrate some of the different violin and cello sounds you can get on the Mellotron. We're using the M400 3 violins B and the M400 cello, both layered and separately for this jam. First thing I want to do, though, is turn the effects off so we get the straight sound. And on the Mellotron, you can change the sounds via, you can have them by machine, so you're just running through all the M400 sounds and all the other models of the Mellotron, or you can do it by, index it by name, or you can index it by category. You hold down the left button to do that. I want to do by category, so index by name, index by category. Then to get to that view, you just press the right button. So essentially I can just now walk through the 3 violin sounds. And it's funny, there's three violin sounds and there's 3 cello sounds. Let me just move the mix to that. So let's start with the 3 violins for the Mellotron Mark I. This is the iconic violin sound. Again, no effects. And then let me skip the next one because it's a Chamberlin, and let me go to the M400 3 violins B, which is what we're going to use. So a lot darker. Let's go back to the Mark II. And then we've got the Chamberlin. Sounds pretty much exactly the same, and that is because the Mellotron M400 actually does use the tapes, or at least the original 3 violins recording that was done for the Chamberlin Music Master. And then for the M400, it's just EQ'd differently, so which makes it really dark. Now, I'm actually going to re-EQ it to take away some of the darkness, but not make it as bright as the Mark II. So that's the 3 violin sounds, and again, we'll use the one from the M400. Here's the cello. So this is the iconic cello sound that is, well known from the M400. And then the M400 has a second cello sound called Cello B. Again, darker. And then we'll sample the Chamberlin M1, different. So that's either a real high cello or it's a violin or a viola, and they're just saying it's a cello, but that is not the same tapes as the M400, completely different. One other thing I want to point out about the cello that I had before is that once you get here to C, the musician, the cellist that they were recording for the original tapes would not play below this note. So what they did is they recorded a string bass being bowed, and that's what they added in. So I'm just going to descend, and then you'll hear exactly what I'm talking about. So you get that really, really deep bowed sound. Which is actually cool and does work in some settings, but it can be jarring as well. So that's a walk through the different sounds that you can get for the 3 violins and for the cello. Let's go back to we need to go back to manual machine. Okay, so we're indexed by machine. Let's go back. Let's go back there. I got to change that back to the cello, and we want this to be the 3 violins B. All right, so this is what the sounds we're going to use today sound like layered. No effects. Let's walk through all the effects now. I'm going to turn them on individually. And let's turn that off. We'll get them all turned off, and then we'll walk through them one by one. So I'm going to start with the compressor. MixBox is great. Again, it's a multi-effects. You go in, you've got all the different categories, and then you choose the one you want. This is a nice, solid compressor. Right now, all this is going to do is essentially raise the volume, so this is going to be a lot louder. All right. We've also got a phaser. I've got the wet dry. You do have not only mix knobs on a lot of the effects, but under here you can also control the wet and the dry. I have this at about 10% because I just want to get a little movement, and it does interact with the chorus to really make it big. But here's the compressor and the phaser. So you're not really hearing it so much. It's really being overpowered by the volume. The compressor is introducing, but it does that. I can hear it in the headphones. Next, we're going to turn on the chorus. This is, to me, it's just by the color blue. It's a Boss CE2 or CE3, whatever, CE something. And with this in conjunction with the phaser does introduce some movement, but also I'm using the chorus just to widen the stereo field a bit. So here we go with the chorus now added. Move over here. Next up, we've got a digital delay. There's 3 delays available in MixBox. You have the digital delay, a reverb delay, and a tape delay. I've used the tape delay before in previous videos. I like the digital delay because you can do ping-ponging, but not just left-right. You can have left, center, right, which is what I'm using here. So let me play the staccato first so you can hear a little bit of that, and then I'll play legato. So you're getting the triple, I can hear it in the headphones. You're getting the left, then the center, then the right. And here we go, legato. And when you're using a delay and playing legato, it really is acting as a reverb too. So while I have a room reverb set up here, I'm not using it because it just kind of muddies things up. This digital delay is really adding all the reverb we need. I'm using an EQ, as you heard in the sounds before the effects. The 3 Violins B is very dark. So what I've done here is I've just lowered some of the bass frequencies and the mids just slightly. I mean, we're talking like -1 dB, maybe -1.5, but it does take kind of some of the muddiness away. And you know, one of the tips that people talk about all the time with EQ, which is true, is it's better to take away frequencies than add them. So if you have a muddy sound, instead of just boosting the highs, kind of start finding some frequencies in the lows to cut and the mids. And you don't really have to cut them a lot in order to make a substantial change. Now, I did try a parametric EQ here too as well to kind of hone in on some frequencies with a wide, you know, with a wide Q range so that it was a wide EQ range. But to be honest, I found this graphic equalizer just easier to use, and I was able to kind of really pinpoint the frequencies, which seems counterintuitive to me because that's what the parametric EQ does, but regardless, it was just easier for me to get a sound here that I liked rather than with a parametric one. So let me play a couple of chords without the EQ, and then I'll add the EQ in. So really, I'm just taking out that muddiness, which occurs really in the lower notes. A high-pass filter might even be good here because, I could just have it roll off around 80, 80 or 100, but dropping the mid frequencies just a little bit also kind of takes away some hollowness and adds some warmth. And finally, I have a stereo imager. It's kind of wide now, but this just adds a little more depth to the stereo image. So let me play this without the stereo imager, and then I'll turn it on. So in headphones, you can hear it. It's really subtle, but what I'm hearing is it's just making the strings more noticeable that there's that they're not mono, that they're in the left right. So this, I'm sure it would sound pretty much the same through YouTube whether I use it or not, but I like the sound in headphones. So that's the setup. It's pretty straightforward. MixBox, again, is great. In past videos, I've talked the difference between serial and parallel effects, et cetera, and then when you're doing it in apeMatrix, you're kind of, connecting things here and there. They're not always in order. So what I like about MixBox is I just need one slot in apeMatrix, and then I can just do everything in the app. All right, so you've heard kind of some of what I'm going to do, that chord sequence in the jam, and let's do the jam. A number of jams I've done recently have relied on Mellotron sounds that, while they're recordings of real instruments, it's hard to fit them into a musical setting. For those sounds, I often use a lot of different effects to create a complex ambient soundscape. But today I wanted to do something a little more melodic, and I wanted to highlight a couple of the iconic sounds from the Mellotron M400, the 3 violins B, and the cello. Sure, I use some effects, but I think the sound of the original instruments did come through. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and good luck with your own music.